This is a special prison that holds supernatural beings inside. There are not only oracles who can communicate with spirits, but also vampires who have existed for centuries. Even the manager, Theo, is a psychic. His ability is to recall memories, allowing him to read memories by touching objects. Not long ago, Theo was ordered to arrest the demon's son, Lasher. However, he was hindered by the heir of the Mayfair witch family. Can he find the demon's son and end it all? Welcome to the latest fantasy drama, Anne Rice's Mayfair Witches. Before the story begins, let's briefly review the plot of the last season. The young neurosurgeon Rowan discovered that she was the heir of an ancient witch family. As she struggled to face her new powers, she also had to resist the demon Lasher, who had plagued the family for generations. He used each generation of witch heirs to propagate his physical form. As the 13th witch, Rowan attempted to rebel against her family's fate, but finally gave birth to the demon Lasher. She didn't give up this child who shouldn't have been born, but instead raised the demon child alone. Lasher was unlike any ordinary child. He grew rapidly and had an insatiable appetite. To figure out the differences between Lasher and normal people, Rowan continuously used her X-ray abilities to study his body structure, but she couldn't explain his bizarre growth rate. Rowan felt both love and fear for this child, and could only ask the elders of her family. Logically, to get the physical body, Lasher had sacrificed all his powers to his mother, Rowan. So since Lasher had lost his powers, why was he still growing so fast? And what was his purpose for coming into this world? Rowan had too many questions in her heart.
Very soon he'll be a grown man, and surely then he will tell all of us what he wants.
And planned to find the answers herself. In the evening, she opened the diary of the previous heir, Catherine Mayfair, to try to understand the connection between the demon Lasher and the witches. Just as Rowan was absorbed in reading, she suddenly sensed someone approaching. It was Theo from the Terra Institute, which has been dedicated to studying supernatural events since the Middle Ages. In the last season, he had been protecting the heroine and preventing the demon from reincarnating to gain a physical body. At this moment, they ran into each other at the door. Theo quickly got into his car and left. After returning to the hotel, he immediately picked up a Bible to orally archive his memories. Theo knew better than anyone that Lasher was definitely not just an ordinary and innocent child.
Lasher has insinuated himself into Rowan Mayfair's life, and she's doing everything she can to protect him. She's fortified the house with charms and spells, and I've yet to find a way past them, but there must be one. She needs you, Sib.
Theo carefully wrapped the book containing his memories and gave it to his most trusted person, Arjuna, along with a note that said, "Please give this to me the next time you see me." After delivering the book, Theo returned to the hotel, but as soon as he entered, he was dazed by a cloud of purple smoke. A group of mysterious individuals captured Theo. On the other side, Rowan's cousin Moira, whom she had never met, returned to the town. Because her sister Tessa was killed by the anti-witch organization in the last season, Moira had come back this time to mourn her sister. Moira had the ability of telepathy, allowing her to read the thoughts of others. However, this ability was somewhat passive, so she often wore headphones to isolate herself from the outside world. Late at night, Moira quietly came to the yard to dig up her sister's coffin, which was covered in weeds, attempting to read the voice of the deceased. But Moira's abilities were not strong enough for that yet. She silently made up her mind to find out what had really happened to Tessa. As time passed, it was the 5th night of Rowan raising her son. A few drops of blood fell onto her face, waking Rowan from her light sleep. This terrifying child was cheerfully pulling out his baby teeth. Because his body couldn't metabolize normally, Rowan looked at the plate of bloodstained teeth and for the first time considered killing her son, but the remaining maternal nature within her stopped her. The next day, Lasher had grown even more, and the spirits of the elders in the house couldn't help reminding Rowan, "You need to act quickly before he continues to grow. Killing the demon is not a crime." At this moment, Lasher was playing with a doll made of witch body parts. Rowan stepped forward to take back the family relic, but to her surprise, Lasher shoved her down. In her panic, Rowan used her abilities, and the broken glass cut Lasher's cheek. Rowan softened again, and quickly healed Lasher's wounds, repeatedly apologizing to him. Then she picked up the bloodied glass shard from the ground and headed to the hospital affiliated with the Mayfair family. Rowan quickly extracted a blood sample and contacted her old colleague, Lack, asking him to perform a genetic test.
Definitely some kind of genetic anomaly in the patient. I need to know what it is.
As Rowan was sending out the sample, she unexpectedly saw a family member of a patient crying because her young child was suffering from a terminal illness. As a fellow mother, Rowan felt a rush of compassion. and quietly slipped into the hospital room, using her witch powers to heal the little girl. Too exhausted, Rowan felt a bit dazed and collapsed onto a bench, feeling a bit confused for a while. Unexpectedly, she ran into her cousin Karen. This hospital was owned by her father.
That neurosurgery job you offered me, what happened with that?
It's still available.
The ones who captured Theo were indeed the Terra Institute, and they had issued a new task for Theo to catch Lasher. This demon now had a physical form and would disrupt the balance of the natural world. Theo said that Lasher currently lived in the old Mayfair mansion on First Street. No outsiders could enter without family permission. He had tried all counter curses to no avail.
We've identified someone who has a vendetta against Lasher. Someone who can get in and out of the house with ease.
Mayfair.
We believe she can be turned to our side.
The target the Terra Institute had in mind was none other than the recently returned Moira. At this moment, she had arrived at the house on First Street, requesting to see Lasher. However, in the 6 hours since Rowan left home, Lasher had already grown into a teenager. Moira believed that her sister's death was closely related to him. After all, Tessa had once been deceived by the demon. So Rowan had to explain that the Lasher upstairs wasn't the same Lasher who had approached her sister. He had no memories after his reincarnation. Rowan asked Moira to leave for now and promised to arrange a meeting between them when Lasher was ready. Cousin Dolly reminded Rowan that Moira could read minds and that she should play music to interfere when Moira was nearby. But Rowan didn't lie and wasn't afraid to be read minds. Lasher simply didn't remember Tessa, although he was a powerful magical being before his reincarnation. He had given up all his powers just to have a flesh and blood body. Rowan had also been wanting to find out the reason behind Lasher's actions, so she directly asked her son,
To tie, to jump, to smell. I like your smell, Rowan.
But it wasn't just those things that you wanted.
Rowan firmly believed that Lasher had ulterior motives. The boy suddenly moved in to attempt to kiss her. Rowan couldn't accept such a twisted relationship. Rejected by his mother, Lasher felt depressed and went to a nearby nightclub. He quickly met a girl and was attracted by her unique scent. The scent was very similar to Rowan's. The two hit it off quickly, but Lasher's unique nature was too much for an ordinary girl to handle. Although Lasher sought help from his mother in time, the girl was beyond saving, even with witchcraft. To protect her son, Rowan tricked Lasher into the basement, locked him in, and went out alone to deal with the body, while she dumped the girl into a bog to sink. Lasher opened a window and climbed out of the basement, having already transformed into a middle-aged form. He picked up the girl's identification, which read Lucy Mayfair. When Rowan returned to the basement, she discovered that Lasher was already gone. At this moment, Lack called, asking if there was something wrong with the sample because it looked completely unlike a human. Rowan told him not to meddle and to send her the results quickly. She hung up the phone and went out to search for her son. At this moment, Lasher sneaked into a room by the lake and randomly found some clothes to change into. He suddenly caught a whiff of a scent coming from the lady standing in the gazebo by the lake. Lasher was very interested in the woman's scent, so he used his charm to attract her. The lonely lady quickly fell for him, lying on the couch with Lasher. In the end, she bled out and died. Meanwhile, Rowan searched in vain. Instead, it caught Karen's attention, who saw her father Cortland locked in the basement. He had conspired with Lasher to harm Rowan and was petrified into a statue by Rowan. However, Cortland didn't die from this. Instead, he was trapped in a mirage. In there, he met his father. Cortland had been afraid of his father since he was young, because his father believed he was a failure. Lacking any qualities of the Mayfair family, being trapped with his father was his greatest nightmare. Cortland served his father like a servant during meals, but the food on the table quickly ran out. He dared not let his father go hungry, so he picked up a carving knife to cut off his own arm for extra food. His father showed no reaction upon seeing this, as he picked up the carving knife to cut the meat into pieces and chewed it. This horrifying scene continued to loop. Karen didn't resent Rowan for petrifying Cortland. Instead, she believed that this traitor should be killed. But no one understood Lasher better than Cortland, so she planned to awaken him. However, Karen thought her father was too cunning, so advised Rowan not to break the spell unless absolutely necessary. Just then, Karen received a phone call, informing her that their cousin Gifford had died. The two quickly rushed to the crime scene. It turned out that Gifford was the woman lured by Lasher last night. It seemed that as long as they were witches of the Mayfair family, they would emit a scent that attracted Lasher. But even those from witch families, not everyone could withstand Lasher's unique nature. Rowan spotted a milk bottle in the corner and realized that this incident was caused by Lasher. Rowan immediately began searching for him nearby the house. Sure enough, she found Lasher in the woods, and he had transformed into the form of father.
You don't love me that way.
Oh, I love you in a new way.
Lasher no longer trusted his mother. He pushed Rowan away and took off running. Rowan quickly used her magic to stop him. She feared that Lasher would continue to harm the Mayfair family, even if it was unintentional. He couldn't resist the instincts of a demon, however. The adult Lasher wasn't so easily controlled. He quickly shrugged off Rowan and hid away. The next day, Lasher woke up hungry and followed the scent to steal note from a delivery man, but was chased away when the staff discovered him. On the other side, Theo followed Moira to a restaurant and seized the opportunity to strike up a conversation.
Michelle Maska.
How can you tell?
You have a wall up. I can't read your mind.
It's part of the training.
Theo knew Moira was there for her sister, so he proposed a collaboration. Moira might be able to understand Lasher's thoughts. To show his sincerity, Theo lowered his defenses, and Moira instantly read his mind. Discovering that Theo had fallen in love with Rowan, he truly wanted to help the Mayfair family deal with Lasher. At this moment, Rowan returned home and flipped through the family album, only to discover that the woman she had thrown into the lake was actually a member of the Mayfair family. She worried that Lasher would use the scent to continue finding new victims, so she used her powers to summon a storm, to disrupt the scent molecules in the air. Just then, Lack suddenly arrived with the test report, which could have easily been sent via email. Rowan didn't expect Lack to bring it in person. She had to pause her spell and take him back to the hotel first. On the way, Lack mentioned the abnormalities in the blood sample. It had 4 extra chromosomes compared to a normal human's genes. Lack wanted to know whose blood this actually was. Rowan changed the subject after hearing this. Meanwhile, Lasher had already targeted Moira's mother. Witches are naturally unable to resist the approach of demons and easily fall into the hormonal trap. The younger daughter heard noises downstairs and awkwardly shut her bedroom door tight. When Moira returned, her mother was already dead, bleeding out. The little sister heard her sister's voice and was about to go downstairs. Moira was afraid to scare her and quickly called Karen. Rowan soon received the news as well and learned that Theo had also arrived at the crime scene. Because he knew Moira, Rowan was worried that Lasher could be in danger. She hurriedly said goodbye to Lack and returned to the basement. At this point, she had to awaken Cortland. He finally escaped the nightmare and returned to the real world.
What does Lasher want? Where would he go? He wanted to be born in a human form, and then what?
And then he would lead the family into a new day.
Cortland had no idea about Lasher's intentions. He had initially helped the demon because Lasher promised to help the Mayfair family thrive. He never expected Lasher to harm witches. At this moment, Theo removed his gloves and touched the corpse, allowing him to see the deceased's memories before death. Indeed, the murderer was Lasher. After Lasher killed the third witch, he ran to a park fountain to wash off the blood. A man in black noticed him wandering around and approached to strike up a conversation. Lasher didn't want to talk much with a stranger, but unexpectedly, the man in black could teleport.
What are you?
What the damn hell are you?
I don't know.
The two sat on a bench and chatted. Lasher confessed that he had no memories. He vaguely remembered kneeling in a church to pray, thinking maybe he was a priest in his past life, which explained the feeling. The man in black said that feeling was called guilt, a trait unique to humans. Guilt made them easy prey, like sheep waiting to be slaughtered. The man in black spotted someone in the distance and immediately entered hunting mode, with red eyes and fangs. He was a vampire. Before he left, the man told Lasher, "My purpose is to cull the sheep. It's the law of nature." However, Lasher didn't smell like a vampire. His scent was very unfamiliar.
So there's no one else like me?
Your new thing. New rules. Listen to your appetites, your instincts. It's all you can do. You live by them, you'll go crazy.
After saying this, the vampire pounced on the stranger, and a scream echoed in the silent night sky. On the other side, Rowan asked Cortland to invite all the cousins of the family to First Street. After all, 3 people had already died in just 2 days. It would be best to hold a meeting to discuss this, but all the elders wanted to meet Lasher. Cortland could only lie, claiming that he was indeed on First Street. Cortland also reminded Rowan that the children of the Mayfair family had grown up listening to Lasher's story, believing that he would bring transformation and miracles to the family. Even if you told everyone that Lasher was killing people everywhere, they would come up with countless reasons to refute you and even shift the blame onto you.
It hurts me to say it, but my brother's not wrong. Lasher is their god. We tell them what he's done, they'll abandon you, not him.
Rowan said that she had her own plan and warned the ghost not to interfere. Moira also received a call from Cortland. She informed Theo that Rowan wanted them to gather at First Street. Moira originally didn't want to attend, but Theo insisted that she go check for any clues about Lasher. In fact, Rowan's reason for gathering the family was not just to cast some protective spells, it was mainly because of the scent that gathered from the Mayfair family, which might lure Lasher out. At that time, Rowan would find a way to trap him and confine Lasher in an endless mirage. On the night of the meeting, Theo and the leaders of the Terra Institute also arrived near First Street to stake out. It was said that a special escort agent had also been sent from above, and once they captured Lasher, the agent would immediately transfer him to a safe house. As for more details, the leader couldn't disclose them to Theo. Before long, Karen brought Moira's younger sister over. The little sister was gloomy due to their mother's tragic death and had been feeling down lately. Rowan spent some time persuading her to come inside. Soon after, other relatives arrived. As soon as they arrived, they asked where Lasher was. Rowan had to lie, saying that he was upstairs and would be down in a little while. Then Moira also arrived at First Street. The little sister nervously clung to her sister, as she had been worried lately that after their mother's death, she would be fostered by relatives. Moira assured her sister that such a thing would never happen. Now, 3 women were still missing. Aside from the always late Doreen and Marjorie, there was also Evelyn. Aunt Dolly had called her several times, but none of the calls went through. Rowan asked her to try calling a few more times, then she received a call from Lack. He made a special trip to deliver some documents and hadn't booked a flight to leave yet. He just wanted to meet with Rowan, but Rowan really couldn't break away at the moment. To avoid wasting Lack's trip, Rowan promised to see him tomorrow. At this moment, Lucy's father also arrived safely, unaware that his daughter had been buried at the bottom of the lake. He had been waiting for news from the police for the past few days. Seeing his anxious face, Rowan felt truly guilty. Even in a trance, she saw the lifeless Lucy lying on the floor. She hurried into the restroom to compose herself. Meanwhile, Lasher, exhausted and hungry, wrapped himself in his clothes and walked into a bar on the street, even asking the barmaid for a glass of milk. Coincidentally, the barmaid was Evelyn from the Mayfair family. It was her first time to see a customer come to a bar for milk. Lasher stayed until nearly closing time. Evelyn was about to ask him to leave, when Lasher suddenly grabbed her wrist. She immediately slapped him hard. Unlike other cousins, she wasn't easily lured. At the same time, in a villa on First Street, Cortland was trying to regain control of the situation. Rowan quickly jumped into the conversation to prevent Cortland from taking charge, but as soon as she joined the discussion, people crowded around her, demanding to know when they would see Lasher. Moira pointed out that she had searched every corner and couldn't find him. Rowan had to confess that in fact, she also didn't know where Lasher was.
You don't think he's somehow involved in
Oh,
this
no,
thing?
no. My dear Ryan, Lasher's protected his family for centuries. It's because he's gone we find ourselves vulnerable to this harm.
Moira, standing nearby, didn't believe this explanation. Rowan had to take her to another room to confess. Yes, it was Lasher who killed your mother. I gathered everyone together tonight to lure Lasher out and to find a way to kill him. If you don't believe what I'm saying, you can feel free to read my mind. Moira wasn't going to be polite, but as soon as she tried to delve into Rowan's mind, she was met with a surge of pain. Clearly, Rowan's magical abilities far surpassed Moira's, so she couldn't easily use her telepathy. However, Moira expressed her willingness to trust her this time. Rowan specifically said, "I know you have close ties with the Terra Institute, but tonight is crucial, and we cannot let them or anyone else disrupt my original plan." Unexpectedly, Moira turned and contacted Theo, informing him that Lasher wasn't on First Street and that Rowan intended to lure him over to kill him.
I want to believe her about, I don't know. What do you think?
I don't know either. I think we have to proceed with our plan.
After some hesitation, she decided to follow Theo's plan. As night deepened, Evelyn had still not arrived. Rowan called upon her trusted cousin, Alonso, asking him to go personally to get Evelyn. Dolly had mentioned that Evelyn had an unpleasant history with Cortland, which was why she didn't want to come to the meeting. Rowan wanted to find Cortland to clarify things but overheard him arguing with Karen. During their argument, they even mentioned Cortland's father
was a terrible man who used Lasher to steal power from...
Rowan interrupted the increasingly agitated Karen and locked Cortland in the upstairs bedroom. At the same time, Lasher lost his patience and locked Evelyn in the bar. He quickly approached her and pinned her against the bar. In a critical moment, Evelyn's son David hit Lasher from behind, but the demon quickly regained the upper hand. Evelyn swiftly smashed a bottle and lunged at Lasher. Alonso witnessed this and immediately reported to Rowan, saying that Lasher had already left the bar and was likely heading to First Street. Rowan hung up the phone and took a deep breath, then stood in the center of the living room to confess the truth that Lasher was the murderer. He was the curse of this family, and we had been bound by him for centuries. The little sister, upon hearing this, actually blamed Rowan for hiding it from her and tried to rush out the door. Karen quickly rushed over to stop her. In a moment of panic, Rowan unleashed her magic, but unexpectedly, her energy surged, which indicated that Lasher was nearby. The closer they were, the more powerful Rowan became. She urged everyone to stay inside and not move, then stepped outside to confront Lasher. Everyone was watching Rowan, and Moira kept urging her to act quickly. Lasher kept playing the victim, calling out for Rowan as mom. As the situation reached a stalemate, Theo casually came out with a tranquilizer gun. Rowan instinctively blocked Lasher and ended up being knocked out by the gas herself. She could only watch as the Terra Institute took Lasher away. When Rowan woke up, everyone had already left, without Lasher by his side. Her abilities were clearly weakened. Meanwhile, Theo had lost track of Lasher. After the Terra Institute took him, they didn't send Lasher to a cell, and the transport vehicle had vanished. Theo followed the tracker on the vehicle and found the abandoned car under the overpass, then used his abilities to scan the entire vehicle, discovering that it was taken by the Terra District Supervisor, Reichert, who had taken Lasher. At the same time, Rowan went to meet Lack, who was eager to reconcile with Rowan, but unfortunately, before they could chat for long, Rowan received a call from Moira, hastily saying goodbye to Lack. Moira said there was a problem at home. The ceiling, curtains, and fixtures all seemed to be eroded, becoming fragile and brittle. Rowan suspected this was related to Lasher's absence. Now little Joe and Moira's sister were still trapped in mental control and unable to escape. If the house continued to deteriorate like this, both of them would definitely be in danger. Rowan needed Lasher's powers to rescue them, so she called Theo to ask for help, only to learn that Lasher had been taken by Reichert. Theo agreed that if he could find Lasher, he would consider helping Rowan. Moreover, Reichert was a friend of Cortland, and he might know where they would take Lasher. Theo took Moira upstairs to confirm using his telepathy, but to their surprise, Cortland truly had no idea. However, Moira picked up that Reichert was actually Julian's man. Julian was Cortland's father. Although he had been dead for many years, in the Mayfair family, death doesn't mean complete disappearance. Moira wanted to know how to communicate with Julian, but Cortland was holding his breath, humming a tune to block her telepathy. Rowan had to agree to release Cortland first. Cortland said that it was simple to chat with Julian, as long as he entered his mental world, like when he turned into a statue before. Cortland didn't want Moira to continue reading his mind, so he went to find the phonograph left by his father, to block her telepathy with music. That machine had been taken by Dolly last night. Rowan suddenly remembered that the machine was quite strange. She often sat in this room reading the family diary, and whenever Rowan read about Julian, the phonograph would automatically play. Could there be some secret hidden inside? Rowan and Moira planned to go find Dolly, to ask her about the phonograph. Meanwhile, Lack, because Rowan left in such a hurry, hadn't had a chance to ask about the origin of the blood sample. To dispel his doubts, he took the cup that Rowan had touched, planning to take it back for DNA testing. After the test, he was shocked. Rowan's chromosome count far exceeded that of a normal human. Meanwhile, Rowan and Moira arrived at Dolly's house, only to find her entranced by the music of the phonograph, completely unable to hear anyone else speaking. At this moment, Dolly's sister Evelyn appeared, explaining that Julian had bound himself to the phonograph before he died, so that their passion could continue forever.
You and him? Or him and Dolly Jean?
We take turns.
A single short sentence turned out to be so shocking. The hourglass beside them was about to run out. Evelyn hurriedly called Dolly back to reality. She used all her strength to hold on to her sister, and her skin instantly aged. Fortunately, Dolly quickly returned to reality. The two sisters explained their reasons for taking the phonograph, which were the same as Rowan's current objective. They wanted to uncover Julian's plan regarding Lasher, but he claimed that Reichert had betrayed him, taking Lasher away without permission. Rowan believed Julian was lying and wanted to enter the phonograph to ask him directly, but before she could act, Moira touched the phonograph and used her telepathy. She kept repeating Tartarus, and then collapsed on the ground, convulsing. When Moira woke up in the hospital, she had forgotten everything that had just happened and had no idea what Tartarus meant. It seemed that to uncover the truth, it would rely on Rowan entering herself. She pricked her finger and smeared her blood on the record, then drank the potion to enter Julian's world. Meanwhile, Theo had just returned to Reichert's office, searching every corner rapidly to sense any traces left by Reichert. He dug out a scrap of paper from the ashes, but, unfortunately, before he could recognize anything, he was stopped by someone named Paulina. Previously, the headquarters had sent Paulina over to escort Lasher to the detention site, but after waiting for a long time, she learned that Reichert had fled with his men. Even though Theo repeatedly declared that he had nothing to do with Reichert's plan, Paulina still arrested Theo and prepared to take him back to superiors for interrogation. Rowan entered a pitch-black world of the phonograph, he saw Julian lying on a bench in front of the fireplace, looking old and frail, lacking vitality. No matter what questions he asked, he received no answers. Rowan signaled Moira to pull him back to reality. However, in the next moment, Rowan felt his consciousness split in two. One part successfully returned to reality, while the other part remained inside the phonograph. Seeing his plan come to fruition, Julian immediately reminded Rowan that within 40 minutes, if the outside version of her couldn't perceive her own absence, she needed to summon the remaining part back to reality in time, or both versions of her would die. After hearing this, Rowan said, "Since I'm going to die anyway, you might as well tell me where Rykert plans to take Lasher." But Julian still refused to confess. This meant that Rowan must have a chance to escape. Otherwise, Julian wouldn't have any concerns. Just as the two were engaged in a psychological battle, Lack suddenly appeared. The real-world Rowan heard someone visiting and hurried downstairs, wanting to send Lack away. At this moment, she was unaware of her absence. Only feeling a bit weak, Lack didn't beat around the bush with Rowan, but pulled out the DNA test results. He said, "You have 4 extra chromosomes, each of which is completely different. Those extra chromosomes are the same as the blood sample you previously gave me." Rowan instantly panicked. She quickly went to ask Dolly for a potion of forgetfulness, to make Lack forget everything. He was just an ordinary person and shouldn't be involved in the world of witches, trapped inside the phonograph. Rowan B was monitoring the outside world. Julian said, "How about we make a bet? The outside version of you definitely wouldn't give him the forgetfulness potion, though protecting the Mayfair secret at all costs is something every witch must do. You didn't want to hurt this ordinary guy." The two wanted to know what the outside Rowan A would do, so they closely watched the room. Rowan poured a glass of whiskey for Lack and asked if he remembered when they interned together back then. "I could always spot the patient's problems at a glance. Actually, it wasn't some kind of medical gift, but because I have the ability to see through things, I'm a witch." Julian was very pleased. "See, you just can't harden your heart. You like this, Lack." Rowan B didn't disprove Julian but instead used the limited time to learn that Tartarus was a mysterious family. Julian didn't want anyone to know about this family, so he tore out all the relevant records from Margaret's diary. Just as Rowan B was about to delve deeper, the outside Rowan A had completely confessed, even revealing Lasher's existence to Lack.
I'm all intellect, and she's just a big jumble of feelings.
Head and heart.
Lack, after hearing Rowan's words, suddenly thought of a possibility. If he had Lasher's blood or other biological tissue, he could make the cells rapidly multiply. In that case, even if the real Lasher wasn't there, Rowan could gain enough power to save little Joe and his sister. Rowan A remembered that Lasher had lost many baby teeth during her growth period. The two immediately opened the teeth to scrape out the pulp inside, but the teeth had been stored for too long, making them difficult to extract. Moreover, Lack accidentally cut his hand. Rowan quickly went to find a first aid kit and asked Dolly for the forgetfulness potion. The reason she had fully confided in Lack earlier was to see if revealing her identity as a witch would affect Lack's feelings for her. Now that Rowan knew this love wouldn't change, she could safely let Lack take the potion. Unfortunately, she didn't know that Dolly's potion didn't just make Lack forget today's memories, but made him forget all the time spent with Rowan. During the time Rowan was trapped, Moira had been guiding Cortland to help him recall the memories erased by his father, Julian. To her surprise, she actually discovered something. From the depths of Cortland's mind, Moira learned that he had a brother named Ian, living in Scotland. No wonder Julian didn't care at all about the fate of the New Orleans family, because he wanted to send Lasher to the family of his eldest son in Scotland. Moira hurried to tell Rowan about this, but unexpectedly, the other party suddenly knocked over the forgetfulness potion and then collapsed to the ground. Everyone finally realized Rowan A's absence and helped call back the part she had lost. Rowan successfully escaped her predicament. They had to head to Scotland immediately, to a town called Kilbride, because that was Ian's hometown. Rykert indeed brought Lasher to Kilbride, but he was killed by Ian as soon as he completed his task. Soon after, Rowan and the others arrived in England, but just a few kilometers from the town, the car suddenly had a flat tire. They had to proceed on foot. The townspeople were dressed in strange outfits, celebrating a festival called Street Michael. The group decided to split up to search for clues about Lasher. Moira followed a figure in a red robe alone and walked into an old pub by the street. The decor here was exactly like the scene inside the phonograph. But Moira had never been inside the phonograph world. Otherwise, she would have noticed that something was off. Rowan was very anxious when she couldn't reach Moira, but the driver sent by the hotel didn't want to wait any longer. They had to leave Moira behind and follow the driver to the Mayfair Hotel. The car drove until deep into the night before stopping in front of a shabby building. This was not a hotel but Ian's residence. He walked over and hugged Cortland tightly, affectionately, calling him brother. The driver, Hamish, was actually Ian's son. Rowan requested to see Lasher, but Ian said she was already resting. Why don't we sit down for dinner first? I'll send someone back to town to look for your lost cousin Moira. Before dinner started, Rowan wandered around the house and saw a little girl named Bonnie sitting upstairs, playing the bride. She said that Lasher was about to marry the bride, Emlyn. This bride was from the mysterious Tartarus clan, who were once revered as deities in Scotland and possessed the most wondrous creative powers. Unfortunately, the Tartarus people were nearly exterminated, and now only Emlyn remained as the last female descendant. If she married Lasher, it would create an immensely powerful force, Rowan explained. I won't interfere with this wedding, but I need a vial of Lasher's blood. Ian immediately refused. Upon hearing this, Rowan instantly used her witch powers to choke Ian from a distance. Now that she was closer to Lasher, her power was incredible, but Bonnie suddenly let out a gasp of pain.
You see, Rowan, our family is bonded, stitched together into a web.
Harming Ian would mean harming the entire family. Rowan couldn't hurt a child, so she had to stay for dinner. She wanted to probe into the family's intentions, so she approached the neglected younger son, Hamish, to extract information. Rowan could tell that this young man didn't want to be trapped in the witch's house at all, so she bluntly said, "The Mayfair family has endless money. As long as you help me find Lasher or Moira, I can send you to study in America and leave this place forever." Hamish was indeed tempted. He whispered to Rowan, "You can check the tunnel in the basement. I can't reveal more." The next morning, Rowan quietly slipped into the basement tunnel while everyone was asleep, only to find herself locked inside by Hamish. It turned out to be a trap. Theo arrived at the Amsterdam headquarters, where a blonde woman named Lisa came to greet him, but she didn't interrogate Theo. Instead, she wanted to use his perceptive abilities to track down Lasher's whereabouts. Theo completely turned against them. "Since I joined the organization, you have never disclosed any details about the missions. I'm just a wrench in the toolbox, and I receive none of the respect I deserve," Theo frankly said. "If you want me to help, then the New Orleans division should be handed over to me afterwards." After some hesitation, Lisa agreed to Theo's request. He was also to fulfill his promise to help her. She ordered her subordinates to bring up a corpse that had died in 1550. The deceased belonged to the Tartarus clan. Lisa wanted Theo to pry into his memories to find traces of Lasher, but when the coffin lid was pushed open, Theo recognized it as Lasher's previous incarnation. Although he was immortal, his physical form would constantly change. This original Lasher was quite old. Rowan, trapped in the tunnel, followed the flame in her palm back to the surface. To her surprise, Ian's wife was waiting at the door. She had Bonnie hand Rowan a vial of Lasher's blood and urged her to leave Scotland quickly. But Rowan returned the blood to them, saying, "I won't go back." Without finding Moira, Ian's wife had no choice but to take her to see Moira, who was locked in the attic. Unfortunately, Moira was completely isolated here, unable to use her telepathy to investigate further. However, she could confirm that Reichert was dead. Upon hearing this, Rowan was very worried that Lasher might be in danger. She told Moira to stay in the attic for now and then threatened Ian's wife to take her to see Lasher. The mother and son were extremely emotional upon meeting. Rowan wanted to hurry and leave with Lasher, but Lasher insisted on staying. Lasher had discovered that his blood could bring withered trees back to life, and she already knew who she was. As he began to explain to Rowan, Theo also learned of a long-buried past by touching the dead body. Lasher's mother was a beloved queen, but she had never been able to bear a son for the king, until one afternoon, Lasher was born. This newborn, who grew continuously, filled the queen with fear. She ordered her maid to dispose of Lasher and to tell the king that the child had died at birth. Although the maid feared for her life, she still handed Lasher over to the Scottish lord, with whom the queen was having an affair. This man was Lasher's true biological father.
He's a Taltos, first to come in a century.
The Lord took Lasher back to Scotland. The journey took 15 days. During this long journey, the Lord taught Lasher everything about the Tartarus clan. However, when they arrived in Scotland, they found that the place was in ruins. The king's army had burned and desecrated this sacred land. The Lord summoned a wolf to bite Lasher's hand, and her blood caused the withered trees to come back to life. Later, Lasher became the priest of this land, helping Scotland regain its peace. He also met his destined bride. Lasher firmly believed that remaining in Scotland to continue his bloodline and using the power of his descendants to restore life to the land destroyed by humans was his innate mission. The blood of Tartarus is the blood of the earth. Theo asked Lisa, "Where was this body found?" "Lasher must be in that place."
It was a peat bog in Scotland, a town named Kilbride.
Because Lasher was unwilling to leave, Rowan had to stay and attend the wedding. She had to find another way to take him away. During this time, Ian flew into a rage because he discovered that Julian wanted to return to the world using his eldest son, Hamish. He would never allow such a thing to happen, so he convinced his brother Cortland to enter the phonograph world together to resist their father. But once Cortland entered, he realized it was a trap. It turned out Julian had his eyes on Cortland's body, so he and his eldest son, Ian, set a trap to trap Cortland in the phonograph world, and Julian used his body to return to the world. Soon after, the grand wedding began. Rowan changed into the formal dress they had prepared for her and went to meet Cortland. She didn't know that he had already been possessed by Julian. Then the bride and groom made their entrance. The two were naturally drawn to each other and had to tie themselves with ropes to control their impulses, to avoid any embarrassing situations. Under the priest's guidance, they completed the ceremony, and the tall butcher behind them cut the ropes. In the next moment, Lasher and Emlyn charged towards each other like bulls. The curtain in the pavilion fell, obscuring their figures. Rowan wanted to rush over to stop them, but she was grabbed by Ian beside her. He drew a knife and cut his palm. Lack let out a cry of pain. It seemed Ian had done something to him, to use Lack's life to threaten Rowan. Cheers, accompanied by Emlyn's shouts, grew more intense as the wedding gradually approached its climax. Emlyn became pregnant within a few days and spent every day with Lasher. Rowan asked Cortland about Ian's follow-up plans. He replied that they would hold a blessing ceremony once Lasher's child was born. At this moment, a cry of pain came from the bedroom. She was actually going into labor. Rowan was about to rush in to check but felt completely weak. It dawned on her that Cortland had been swapped out. Julian had sent someone to lock Rowan in the dungeon. Coincidentally, Theo and Paulina were also there. As soon as they arrived, they were caught by Ian's men. Now even Rowan was not by Lasher's side. Theo had to find a way to escape the dungeon. He had Paulina pretend to have a stomachache to call the guard over, then placed a drug patch on the guard's neck. This thing could temporarily incapacitate a person's mind. Theo manipulated the guard to open the cell door and woke the unconscious Rowan. He explained that he had touched Lasher's previous self and knew that he was actually a Tartarus being, but had been corrupted and exploited by evil forces, causing him to lose his true nature. Rowan wanted to know how Lasher's first incarnation had died. Theo said that the memories related to the body's death were incomplete, but it could be confirmed that after Lasher's wedding, he was murdered while walking in the woods with friends. At the same time, Lasher was taken to the woods because Ian's youngest son told him that there were about 2 hours until noon, which was the best time for the blessing ceremony. The men were to gather together to pray for their offspring. Lasher was a little confused that the ceremony wasn't in the church and wondered what they were doing in the woods. The youngest son explained that the woods were the true sanctuary of Tartarus. At this moment, the men of Ian's family had gathered together. Lasher, in a daze, knelt down to pray. Meanwhile, Rowan was following the bloodline's guidance into the woods to find Lasher. Unfortunately, before they could reach the ceremony site, Lasher had his throat slit. Several men held him down tightly and collected the gushing blood into a bowl. Julian carried the bowl of blood away from the scene, while Ian ordered his youngest son to stay behind to deal with the body. The grass beneath them, affected by Lasher's blood, burst into a large cluster of wildflowers. When Rowan saw the patch of flowers, she felt a sense of unease and indeed discovered Lasher lying not far away. Ian's youngest son saw them and took off running. Rowan didn't have time to catch him and hurried to check Lasher's condition. Fortunately, he still had a faint pulse. Rowan used her magical power to call him back. At this moment, Paulina received a call, informing her that reinforcements were waiting in the peat bog. Rowan needed to return to help Lasher and rescue his wife and child, then they would meet in the bog later. Meanwhile, Moira used her telepathy to subdue the guard and quietly slipped out of the attic. She changed into a maid's uniform to blend in with the nannies. Emerith had given birth to 8 children, each of whom grew rapidly and had a huge appetite. Several nannies were busily running around, while Julian was blessing the 8 children with the bowl of blood, repeating over and over, "The blood of the father strengthens your blood." It seemed that this blood had the effect of strengthening the offspring. Moira made her way to the backyard and saw Ian's family preparing for a feast. Moira tapped into their thoughts, discovering that the feast they planned to enjoy was actually Lasher's children. Soon, the maids led the main characters to the scene, and the 8 children had grown to look like teenagers, with only the 9th child cradled in Emeritha's arms, still in the form of a baby. At this moment, Julian and Ian were greedily watching the children, secretly thinking about which one they would eat later. Moira hurried to find Rowan to explain that the blessing ceremony Ian mentioned was meant to sacrifice all of Lasher's offspring to seize the magical power contained in the blood of Tartarus. Lasher was furious upon hearing this and immediately summoned his wolf. He charged to the front of the tent to stop them, but Ian brought Lack forward. wanting to use his life to threaten Rowan into stopping Lasher. Ian finished speaking and slashed his palm, but Lack showed no reaction. It turned out that Julian had severed his connection. Ian instantly realized that Julian had betrayed him, choosing to side with Rowan in hopes of obtaining the witch's power. Now that Lack was out of control, Lasher immediately charged at Ian with the wolf. They rushed forward to fight the offspring, but Lasher was momentarily careless and was stabbed by Ian's wife. Rowan quickly struck down the opponent, but Lasher came close to death twice. Even Rowan couldn't save him. Julian was waiting for this opportunity. He held the blood of Tartarus in his hands and tempted Rowan to drink it. This way, you will gain the power of resurrection, and you can establish a connection with me, allowing our powers to resonate. Rowan wasn't easily swayed. She countered, if drinking blood can grant the power of Tartarus, then why didn't the Mayfair family, who killed Lasher 500 years ago, obtain this power long ago? Julian explained that it was because they had misunderstood the method, not knowing that magic was hidden in the blood. Just as Rowan was hesitating, Theo and Paulina had already breached the barrier to prepare for the transfer of Lasher's offspring. Julian received the news and went to stop them. With a mere wave of his finger, he could summon lightning. Paulina was unfortunately struck by lightning while trying to protect the children. In his grief, Theo could only take everyone away first. Rowan saw through Julian's cruelty and refused to cooperate with him, so she had to use a diversion to escape. But Rowan, in order to have the power to continue fighting Julian, chose to drink the blood after all. A wondrous power coursed around her. Soon, Theo sent a message, promising to mobilize all resources to protect Lasher's descendants. Rowan only needed to focus on hunting down Julian. Meanwhile, the ordinary Lack realized that he didn't belong to this world and chose to drink the potion of forgetfulness, to completely forget everything about Rowan. A few days later, Moira returned to the old house with Rowan and rescued the trapped little Jo and her cousin. This season's story ends here. The biggest plot development of this season is that Lasher is not a demon, but a descendant of the Tartaros people, and that Rowan has gained new powers. Anne Rice's Mayfair Witches, as a branch of Anne Rice's Eternal Universe series, is of much lower quality than Anne Rice's Interview with the Vampire series. The director of the second season adopted a non-linear narrative style, which, while adding layers and suspense to the story, made the viewing experience feel loose and fragmented. Overall, it isn't as good as the first season. The motivation to watch this film comes entirely from D'Addario. Without her involvement, it would be hard to get through.